By mid-January 1998, all teams who had tried to fly a balloon around the world had failed, some more spectacularly than others.
Perhaps we've all underestimated the difficulty of this task, but we're going to do our best to put up a really good flight.
Like all in the race, the Swiss team had hit problem after problem, but pilot Bertrand Piccard remained determined to launch his Breitling Orbiter balloon. While Piccard and his crew wait for repairs to be completed on their capsule, there are those who think the Swiss team would be unwise to launch. Two similar balloons, also built by the Cameron Balloon Factory in England, had exploded soon after takeoff. American balloonists Dick Rutan and Kevin Uliassi had both been lucky to survive.
The Breitling envelope is of the same design as that of Dick Rutan. And from what I hear, they have not done a major redesign of the envelope. There's probably an inherent fault in it, and I think that will prevent them from taking off.
These things are sent to trials?
Yeah, they do as well.
Yeah.
Understandably, the recent failures did bother them. They decided to rush through modifications. By fitting extra pressure release valves, they hoped their craft would stand a better chance. On his first attempt to fly around the world, Piccard had flown with Belgian balloonist Wim Verstraeten. Sadly, their flight had been short-lived. Less than an hour into the flight, they had discovered a major fuel leak inside their capsule. They were unable to deal with it and were forced to ditch in the Mediterranean. Next time, Piccard vowed he would have someone on board who knew how to fix problems.
3, 2, 1. Halt.
Since Cameron Balloon's engineer Andy Elson had been the designer and builder of the Swiss craft, Piccard now invited him on board. Elson, an experienced balloon pilot, had been responsible for the American Steve Fossett's record-breaking craft as well.
I think Wim and Bertrand could take off and fly away without me. Whether they get all the way around the world, I don't know. Whether they'll get any further with me on board than without me, I've no idea.
They are about to find out. The Swiss balloon is ready and the weather is right. But since they have a similar balloon system to Kevin Uliassi and Dick Rutan, Piccard is understandably nervous.
We heard a lot of different things about what happened to Kevin Uliassi, to Dick Rutan. I don't know if they went too fast up. Some say yes, some say no. It's always difficult to know.
They have other problems too. Despite sustained diplomatic efforts, a number of major territories, including Russia and China, have failed to grant them overflight permission. Nevertheless, they decide to prepare for an early morning launch. The balloon has become tangled as they inflate it.
Maybe we should stop the gas.
And the wind is getting stronger.
Yep. Where is Andy?
With the wind picking up, they fear for their balloon. Andy Elson should be resting prior to the flight.
I got called out to rush back down to the field to untangle it. As it was a bit dodgy, it was getting windy. I don't mind if they leave things like that to me, because it's easy to lose fingers.
Mind the burners. Mind the burners.
By dawn, the balloon is ready, but the winds over Switzerland have slowed right down.
I was exhausted by the time I climbed on board and ready to go, and all I wanted to do was curl up and go to sleep.
The takeoff was an incredible moment. To have all our friends, all the people so enthusiastic and shouting when the balloon took off, it was great.
In his fatigue, Andy Elson has failed to seal correctly a viewing window at the rear of the gondola.
The hatch locates in a groove, and its position is really fussy. So when we put it on a launch field, we didn't quite get it in the right place. Probably because I was extremely tired.
While they can fly at high altitudes for a short time, using oxygen masks, they will not be able to stay up high where the fastest winds are to be found. Unpressurized, but undaunted, they fly south. They are traveling at less than 10 miles an hour. 24 hours after their launch, they are over France, and they still can't seal the capsule. To add to their woes, they've burned through over a third of their fuel in just the first night. Piccard breaks the news to the control center in Geneva.
Hello, Breitling Orbiter.
Hello, Breitling Orbiter. This is Breitling Control. We have run completely out of one fuel tank on the left, one fuel tank on the right. That's very bad. The rear hatch
Doesn't seal. We really have to find a solution. If we want to climb higher, we'll have to do it, because up to now we flew to flight level, I think 240, unpressurized. We cannot do that for too long. We're not Steve Fossett.
Yes?
Yeah. Okay,
As flight engineer, Elson now climbs outside to see if fuel is leaking from the gondola. He finds nothing. During the second night of the flight, the problem seems to have disappeared, and life on board returns to normal.
Muesli or Quakers?
Muesli, please.
But they still need to be pressurized if they're to stand any chance of making a long-distance flight. All attempts to seal the hatch from the inside have failed.
Yes.
So you still have a problem with the rear hatch seal?
Yes, I think that's the main problem.
They now drop down to 3,000 feet between Italy and Albania. Elson, an experienced mountaineer, decides to abseil underneath the gondola to try to seal the hatch.
It's not possible to take the hatch off from the inside without somebody being on the outside to hold it. There's obviously a flaw in the design, and it would have been a good idea to put a piece of string on the hatch, and then we could have managed it. Because of the shape of the gondola, you'd swing off to one side, so the abseil gets a bit more complicated. You have to use two ropes from different positions.
One small mistake, and he'll be parachuting into the sea below.
The feeling of exposure as you slide down the end of the gondola is amazing. And it wasn't something that I relished doing, but it needed to be fixed.
It's incredibly uncomfortable.
Just one slip, like dropping the only Allen wrench on board, and the flight will be over.
Because we kept the weight down with the toolkit and everything on board, there was only one of anything, so I was a bit nervous about dropping that. The fact that you're flying along at 3,000 feet and there's nothing to stand on makes it much more difficult. I inadvertently clipped my ascending devices for climbing back up the rope to the wrong parts of my harness. I was sort of suspended horizontally rather than vertically.
Andy, good.
After about half an hour, my left arm was giving up on strength. And so once I got the hatch off, I decided to have a bit of a breather, and Bertrand passed me an oxygen mask.
My hand was running out of strength.
Yeah, yeah.
I was holding probably half my weight on my arm.
It took Elson nearly 2 hours to reseat the hatch.
Having put the hatch back on, I had to release myself on one rope and get back up the other rope. And because my arms were so tired from hanging on previously, that was very, very difficult. And there was one bit where I didn't think I was going to have the energy to do it. If I didn't have the energy, either they or I would have had to cut the rope and release me, and I could have parachuted down.
The comeback of the hero.
It takes Elson a full 20 minutes to summon up the strength to get back up. If he hadn't succeeded, the flight would have been over. Without flying at the height of the jet streams, there's little chance of picking up speed.
No more burning now?
Non. Tu chauffes plus, t'es en montée ou en descente, Wim? On monte un peu? Ok, c'est très bien.
They now pressurize the gondola for the first time and climb to 29,000 feet.
There's one other thing.
The control center is concerned that the balloon is now heading for Iraq and more political
Of course,
sensitivities.
there is a no-fly zone over Iraq, which is enforced by the Americans and the United Nations.
On their present track, it isn't just Iraq, but also Iran, Afghanistan and China that are not giving overflight permission.
Hotel Bravo, Quebec Bravo, Victor, do you read?
By noon on day 4, the balloon is approaching Iraqi airspace.
There's no sign of any aircraft coming to see us or anything yet.
We have the first contact with the Iraqis.
Yeah, that's a good start.
Yeah.
But the reason I haven't got much clothes on is because I was in bed until we got to the border, and I just thought it was such a brilliant thing to be actually flying across the border from Syria into Iraq and heading towards Baghdad without hopefully getting shot down.
They get through Iraq in one piece. Iran is next.
Roger. When we arrived in Iran, we started very well on the first part of the flight, and then suddenly a call from the radio, Iranian Air Force 71, you're required to land immediately at the nearest airfield.
We are pushed by the wind. We cannot steer the balloon. Over.
To the intense relief of the crew, the Iranians change their mind and give the balloon permission to overfly.
2nd of February, 8,000 feet, Iran, the desert of salt. Most of the time when we were flying very high, the balloon was completely covered with ice. When we went very low over the desert of Iran, it was very warm and everything started to melt. And it was raining, snowing around the balloon. The ice is melting. And sometimes falling without melting.
The balloon now flies safely through Afghanistan, into Pakistan and onto India. But the projected track is heading straight for China.
The difference with China is that they have said no, and they've said no repeatedly. Iraq didn't say no. If China's going to say no, that's the end of any Pacific flight.
Without Chinese cooperation, their dream of making it around the world is shattered. They now decide to drop into winds that will take them south. But while the control center anticipate an immediate landing, the balloon crew have other ideas. They have just flown past the Taj Mahal.
I think the best part of the flight was the 2 days across India. I was quite a lot sitting on the outside, just looking and feeling the country. And all the smells of India were coming, the spices, also the dry dirt. And we had all the shouting of the children. Shouting, screaming. It made such a noise. We really had the impression to be with the people. What I like in ballooning is this way to play with the winds, to be pushed by the winds, and not to be able to control absolutely everything like we try to do in our usual life. But there is something I really would like to control now and to obtain. It's the absolute duration. Because up to now, the absolute duration belonged to an airplane.
Piccard's dream is to beat the duration of American Dick Rutan's Voyager flight by staying airborne for more than 9 days. They've already beaten Steve Fawcett's 7-day duration record for a balloon, but their fuel is running dangerously low.
You're happy that even at slow speed you can get across the Bay of Bengal?
Well, we're waiting for some weather information.
Yeah, well, of course, there's not a lot for the bay, but we do know that
Then, without warning, China has a change of heart.
I understood that clearly. The Chinese have now authorized the overflight of China.
In due time.
The Chinese have decided to let the balloon fly in the southern part of their territory. But it's too late for the Swiss team. They now have no hope of making it around the world. But on day 9, Piccard equals Rutan's duration record. The celebrations feel flat.
Deep inside, I am really quite bitterly disappointed. We raised our glasses in a toast today, but from my point of view, it was a bit of a hollow toast. Good health, thank you. Balloon control.
We think we'll continue with our present route.
With fuel running out, the team plan to end the flight in Burma. Alan Noble is determined to get to the landing site in time. But first, he has a warning for the crew.
Yes, if you get to the mountains in northern Burma, if you try to climb over them, you will go due north.
All right.
Okay? You cannot climb over the mountains in Burma without going due north.
When we were coming out of India, I was trying to sneak through some mountains a little bit low, in fact quite a bit lower than the control centre had advised, but I was doing that because I wanted to keep the track that we had. It was a good direction.
But Elson is flying straight into an area of recent thunderstorms.
One minute we were sneaking into the mountains, next minute we were getting battered all over the place by turbulence.
By midnight on day 10, the balloon reaches Burma. To the crew's intense relief, as dawn breaks, they see open plains below.
1,400 feet. We're going down quite quick. 165.
Now all they have to do is land their giant
Per
balloon.
minute. Track 171. So that's the end of the trip. 10 days. Okay, 100 feet. Touchdown of the trail rope, touchdown of the trail rope. Track 171. 5 knots.
They have established 2 new records for the longest time a balloon has stayed in the air and the longest an aircraft of any type has ever flown.
When I went down the ladder and put my feet down, I looked at the balloon and said, no, I want to go on.
The next problem is to get the balloon down. The local military decide to put the great balloon out of its misery.
I'm really frightened that somebody's going to be holding it when it gets caught by a gust and gets taken up again. But it's such a shame, I mean, they're excited, they're just overexcited. And we can't communicate properly. They're having fun. I'm just so sorry they're wrecking your balloon.
It's a great disappointment that we didn't make it all the way around the world. But the really good thing is that, well, A, China have given us permission for next time, but B, all the other countries that we flew over were so marvellous, and we've flown through some of the most difficult airspace in the world. You know, we've flown through the no-fly zone in the Middle East, and everyone was brilliant.
The flight has been an invaluable experience for Andy Elson. He has long harbored ambitions to lead his own global attempt and will now set himself up as a major competitor in his own right. Piccard and his team have flown for 9 days and 18 hours, despite being hampered by political problems. Now, in the summer of 1998, solo American balloonist Steve Fossett announces he will avoid all overflight problems and fly in the southern hemisphere.
Well, my previous 2 flights, I'd been plagued by flight permission problems in the northern hemisphere, especially the Islamic countries. And so that's totally eliminated because there's only 5 possible countries that I would cross in the southern hemisphere. The rest of it's water.
In January 1997, Fossett had to drop his balloon into slow winds to avoid entering Libya.
I don't think I'm willing to risk going into Libyan airspace. I'd be forced to land short. There's no roads anywhere. I haven't seen a road in hours of flying.
Then, to everyone's surprise, too late, Colonel Gaddafi changed his mind. Fossett climbed back into the jet streams and picked up speed. But now China declared that it too would not allow him to enter its airspace. In the end, thunderstorms brought him down in northeast India. It was small consolation that he'd smashed the existing distance and duration records. Then, in January 1998, he was again prevented from flying into Libya.
What I wanted to do was go through Libya, but I don't have permission from Libya yet.
This time, he ended up in Russia, just short of his previous distance record. With good reason, he's had enough of politics. No balloonist has ever flown the southern route.
It is a competition, and that is one of the considerations coming to the southern hemisphere, because I felt we were prepared to take on the southern hemisphere, and the other teams were not.
Most of the flight will be over water, days away from any hope of rescue.
Balloon flights have a history of being dangerous. First, there's the problem.
In the southern hemisphere, the jet streams are at their strongest in August. It places Fossett months ahead of the competition.
And in the southern hemisphere, so there may be some new problem that we have not anticipated.
This time, the cost of failure could be very high.
If you haven't previously discovered what your limitations are, that would almost be too dangerous to contemplate launching off in the southern hemisphere. We need to get out of Argentina solidly and get a good trajectory going across the southern Atlantic. And we just had to have a solid trajectory that was going to take me toward South Africa.
Ready for takeoff. Let's get all hands off. Hands off!
Well, I'm very worried, very nervous at liftoff and the climb out. This is where you will discover a lot of equipment problems, if you have them. I'm nervous until I get up to flight altitude.
Almost immediately, the balloon hits problems. Fossett's burners start to fail.
Cam, do you copy on this frequency, over?
Yeah, I do, Steve. This launch out of here was fantastic. Right now, we're monitoring you, and it looked beautiful.
Burner 1 is erratic.
Number 2 is also not firing regularly. 3 and 4 fire regularly.
With the mixture of ethane and propane that we've got...
It's an unnerving start to the flight. As dawn approaches, Fawcett tries to fix the faulty burners, but manages to dislodge a fuel hose. Flames engulf the capsule.
I had a big fire in my hand with high-pressure propane flames shooting out, plus the spilled propane that I had around. So I was just stuck holding this thing, kind of pointing it away from my equipment while this burning is going on, and my sleeves and gloves are on fire as well. The problem was solved by finding the proper tank which was feeding these hoses, and got that turned off.
Fortunately, I was pretty well covered. I was wearing the oxygen mask and gloves. So there was a space on my wrist that I got a little bit of a burn blister and needed to put a dressing on that. A little bit of almost kind of a sunburn on the side of my face. Burned off my left eyebrow.
If I'd burned through another propane hose, I would have had an totally out of control fire. So it was a very dangerous situation.
Despite the fire, Fawcett flies on.
The decision to go for it was really made when I left the coast of Argentina. I'm not sure I'm going to be over land again before I finish around the world. So this is the go.
Despite all the early difficulties, he manages to steer the balloon towards South Africa.
Well, I'm nearing a very important juncture of this flight. In only a couple hundred miles, I'll pass Cape Town, and this will mark the first balloon crossing of the South Atlantic.
I was within 30 miles of Cape Town, so I got a good view of Cape Town that night when I flew by. There were approximately 50 UFO sightings in South Africa when I flew by, so I thought that was pretty funny.
Fawcett has crossed the southern Atlantic in just 3 days. En route to Australia, he breaks his own distance record. He's now flown 13,500 miles.
Well, I'm really happy to get these records, especially the absolute world distance record. It means the flight will be a success in any event. But I also remember what we're really here for, and that's to make the entire round-the-world flight.
Visibility over Australia was very clear, just a few clouds here and there. So it was sensational viewing. This was a fast jet stream going across Australia. And it's a real pleasure flying over a continental area. I spent a lot of time looking out at the deserts and the dry lakes, the features on the ground in Australia.
This is a beautiful sunrise, and I'm looking at, I think some salt lakes down below me, and I'm certainly in the desert here in Australia.
As I was approaching the eastern coast of Australia, there was some thunderstorm buildup in the coastal mountains. I flew over one thunderstorm just 1,000 feet over the top of it. And then I was also hearing that there's a line of thunderstorms out in the Pacific.
Fawcett is now facing a flight across the widest point of the largest ocean in the world. If he makes it, he will be the first to fly around the Earth by balloon. He is alone and tired.
I never even considered whether to land in Australia. It was just a given that I was going for it.
I'll be very proud if I can do it, and I'll be very satisfied with my accomplishment for the rest of my life.
What's this?
We all felt very confident that we could put him from Australia to South America in 3 days in the jet. It was sort of in the bag.
Everybody thought that he probably had it made. All we could see, as far ahead as we could see, was just open field running. There was just really no threats.
Fawcett crosses the Australian coast on day 9 of his flight. His next expected landfall is Chile, 7,500 miles away. It's the last hurdle.
And then I set about to do it. And here I am, and I hope I can do it.
Yeah, he's about 490 miles east-northeast of the coast now. He is approaching and probably over in areas of convective activity.
In fact, Fawcett is flying into a massive thunderstorm.
The last position report that was due didn't come through, and they've been coming through regularly. I think there's a high probability this is not just an accidental trip.
Not we're too worried about picking him up, I'm more worried about him.
With good reason. Fawcett is in a dire emergency.
In my past experience, so long as I was clearing the thunderstorm, clearing the top of the cloud, that was sufficient. The first indication of problem came when the balloon entered a descent of 500 feet a minute. Then it reversed, and it went to about 1,000 foot a minute climb. And then it reversed again, and at that point I believe the balloon ruptured because I went into a very rapid descent. The balloon was really being thrown from side to side. I was burning heavily, and then there was just waves of hail. Had the burners on full blast, and so it was burning parts of the balloon. So it was really a vision of hell. At that point, I said softly out loud, "I'm going to die."
Had about 8 minutes because of the enormous distance that I was falling, even though I was falling very fast.
I laid down on my back to take the impact. Just watched the altimeter as it zinged through. Then I think I must have been knocked out.
During his descent, Fawcett triggers emergency satellite beacons which emit distress signals. But even these stop.
It was obvious that there was a thunderstorm of great magnitude in that area. And instantly we believed that he was sucked into it with a possible lightning strike.
If he bailed out without even being able to get a survival suit, of course, then we're in a long shot scenario. But he's got a survival suit. If he bailed out with that, then we're in only a desperate scenario. The closest merchant ship's a long way away. All the appropriate authorities know what's going on, and they're regarding this as the real thing, not as a phony. They've got all the data.
A search and rescue team waits for first light to take off.
Steve's a man with incredible internal fortitude, that he can do whatever he sets his mind to do. And I believe in that, but at the same time, Mother Nature has some awfully strong forces.
You just try to get a plane on the scene as fast as you can, because if he's still alive when it gets there, then they'll drop the life raft, provisions, and so on. The problem is these things take hours and hours to get there, and if you're floating in the ocean without a survival suit, then it would have been pretty tough to survive that long.
Two hours after dawn, the balloon is spotted. The capsule, with its propane tanks attached, is still floating. The balloon itself is just under the surface. There are no signs of a life raft.
We think it's highly probable then that he's in the water near those locations.
We don't know how he came down, what kind of condition it was in.
We decided maybe we ought to get some rest because it might be a long night. And we went back to the hotel to get the sleep that we needed, and was notified by a phone call about 2 hours later that they'd found Steve and he was in the raft alive.
The Hercules aircraft drops a life raft, radio, and other emergency supplies, and then circles above.
Once they got there, we figured Steve was probably okay. And then we had 3 boats racing to the scene, and they all just kept right on coming.
He's in a raft. That's all we need to know.
The nearest boat to Fawcett is the ketch Atlanta. Her skipper, Australian Laurie Piper, is nearing the end of his own voyage round the world. It takes the Atlanta a full 12 hours to reach Fawcett.
The capsule was upside down and half full of water. The tanks outside the capsule were burning, and were burning the outside of the capsule and creating smoke inside, so I had to get out of there right away. So the two things I knew I had to get out with were the rescue beacon and the life raft. My feet were in the hatch area. I could feel the opening of the hatch area. So once I had those two things in hand, I just slithered out, feet first, out of the capsule, came up on the outside, and then proceeded to open the life raft, and then moved along the balloon myself to get away from the burning fuel tanks. One of them did explode, and then the balloon rolled over on top of me. So here I was in the raft, underneath the balloon, and not even sure which way to get out from underneath it. And I thought, well, this is ironic. After surviving the landing, that I might get asphyxiated with these fumes.
Somehow, Fawcett pulled free and drifted for 16 hours before being rescued. The next morning, he is transferred to a New Zealand naval tanker en route to Australia.
I would not have made that flight if I had known the risk was that high. I just didn't believe I was exposed to that much danger. I don't want to find myself in that situation again, where my life is so close to being lost.
In his attempts to fly around the Earth, Steve Fawcett has made the 4 longest distance balloon flights in history. No other balloonist had ever matched his extraordinary prowess.
Steve flew far further than we expected him to fly. Steve is superhuman. I mean, there's nobody like Steve, I suspect, in the world.
While Fawcett waits in the wings, 6 teams now prepare for the next ballooning season. Like Fawcett,